Hey YouTube, Awesome Writer here. In today's video, I'm going to be ranking all of the Sentai series we have skipped based on adaptability, which is an idea I've gotten from several people over the years. I'm sorry I didn't document it, but if you've suggested it, I probably saw it. And I thought about doing this for a while. I was going to record this a while back, but then I thought, let's wait till we see Boom Boonger, because we're really close, so we can add that into the list. Now, before we get started, obligatory joke about does anyone want to get out. But before we get started, I just want to say, as with my ranking videos, this isn't a factual list. I didn't run a bunch of polls. I didn't run an algorithm. I'm not one of those people that thinks that like there's a correct answer to opinions. This is just my personal opinion that I tried to base off of both what I personally think is adaptable and what's workable, and some experience with like what I've observed, what they've adapted, and comments they've made about other series and their adaptability. You know, because sometimes I think there's BS, but I tried to sort of weigh it like realistically of like, even though I think this statement is BS, I weighed that as a factor. I might have some hot takes, but it's just kind of my opinion, and it's based off of a fantasy land where certain things might line up. So starting at the bottom, I did want to include this, technically the very last, is any pre-Zyuranger Sentai series. Now, I just wanted to include this because technically we did skip over it, and I've seen people suggest we adapt them and go back, which, you know, I want to be clear, I don't think necessarily all the suits are unadaptable in the designs. I actually think there's quite a few of them that, if they were modern, could work pretty well, except for Battle Fever J, unless we're doing a Purge Night adaptation. It's not about that, it's just kind of about, again, I tried to weigh this realistically, because my ideal style for adapting is just don't give an F what the Sentai did. Do whatever you want to do, it doesn't matter what they did. But I'm trying to think about this a little more balanced when I was thought about adaptability of like what their idea was, and part of the bonus of adaption is that they can save money by using existing footage, some existing props, and with these being so old, you know, obviously they're going to recreate their own main suits, but they're not going to have any of the monster suits, probably very little, if anything else, to give them prop-wise, and obviously the old footage isn't going to line up very well. So that's why, again, it's not because the designs are bad, but I think that just in terms of a traditional adaptation, it makes no sense. I wouldn't mind seeing comic stories for all the teams, though. Again, except Battle Fever J, unless we're doing a Purge Night horror comic. Coming in at the bottom, probably a surprise to no one, is Zen Hyer, and I want to be clear also about something. I don't think any of these are unadaptable. I think in the right hands, right circumstances, anything is workable and can be spun. And I actually think Zen Hyer, if done right, could be interesting. Like if you really play up this idea of these cool robot partners and make that like a big thing, make it cool, make them exciting characters, I think it would be an uphill battle, which is why it's so low on the list, but I don't think it's impossible. I just think obviously even for Sentai fans, this was a series that sticks out like a sore thumb. You know, it definitely stands out from the crowd. And it's oddly enough, Zen Hyer's more by the number Sentai than either of its successors, but definitely you can just tell by looking at it, I think it would just be an odd sell. It looks very different, you know, in some ways it looks even more childish, so it's just kind of an easy reason to think why this would be skipped over, even though I think there's potential. Now coming up next is the most recent entry, and maybe this will change, so this is sort of a tentative placement, is Boom Boonger. Now, as of this moment, all we have is the pictures of the designs, so obviously there's other factors to weigh of like, maybe there's other designs in the series that would change my mind, maybe the footage in the show looks actually cool, but just based off of the very off-putting, goofy-looking designs of the tires, I think that it kind of enters that same territory. While PR aims very young in recent years here, it looks even more childish and strange and off-putting, and we already have that problem with the perception of the more odd aspects of Sentai, and I think Zen Hyer and Boom Boonger both fit that category of just being initially more off-putting. I think the mecha look fine, a bit boring, but yeah, again, it's tentative placement. If I ever redo this list, it'll maybe change when we actually have more to go off of than just the suits, but just based off of that, that's where I'd put it now. Then you have Tokuger. Now, I hate ranking this so low because they did make multiple statements about how part of the reason they didn't do it was because trains aren't marketable here. Now, it's true that trains are more of a bigger entity in Japan. That makes it sound like it's haunting it. But it's more of a big thing in Japan compared to here. But it's not like we've never heard what a train is. You know, like not like concepts like the Legend of Momotaro for Dawn Brothers you might not have heard of, although that's obviously higher on this list, you know, but it's not foreign to us. There are still kids that like trains, there's adults that like trains. I think this could have been done, you know, well. I just kind of factored in two things. One, the sort of more basic colorful suits also put it in that almost preschool looking aspect to a degree. Again, I know they aimed very young, but I think they were trying to make it not look so young, and it looked a little bit boring to them. And also the train aspect that they already have brought up, I weighed that in for this, even though I personally think it could be done, especially toy-wise, if you were to lean in on the Reshas and make it almost like a Hot Wheel collectible gimmick, because I actually really liked those ones based on past Sentai and made that really fun. I think under the right circumstances, this could have been well done. But I just kind of weighed their past comments a little bit in this decision. Now after that, maybe surprising people, ranking it this high, a little bit past mid of the list, is Dawn Brothers, because it also is more oddball like Zen Hyer, although it is a little bit more traditional at the same time too. Like, I remember when Dawn Brothers first was like being talked about in rumors, it sounded like it was going to be Zen Hyer, but instead of robots in suits, it was going to be CGI characters. And when we first saw them, I'm like, oh, it's a little more normal looking than I thought. And again, it is very weird looking, but they do look more Ranger-esque than the Zen Hyers. And the reason I ranked it a little bit higher is because, especially in the footage, there's some very like game-like aspects that could be leaned into for a video game-based series. And if you lean this into a video game-based series, you can make odder-looking characters like Inoue Brother and Kiji Brother either video game characters, or just make it that their avatars look weird like that. And I think that it seems like an uphill battle, but I think that this in particular also has a very specific window where it could take off to be something kind of cool and uniquely appealing. Again, this list is part my opinion, part trying to weigh realistic situations. I definitely think you'd probably look at it and say a little too odd, skip over it, but I think there's something there. Next up is Loopat. This was another one they've offered comments on, and I don't want to get too much into this because this is not a political channel, but they definitely said something about, I think it was Simon that said they didn't want to do it because they didn't want to touch on cops because it's a hot button political issue. And admittedly, the Pat Rangers look more police-like than a lot of ones. Like, yes, SPD has like the dog and the badge, but you can get away with kind of fudging that as like, you know, royalty-free cops or whatever. And so there are much more overtly police, but I still think it's workable in terms of you could get a situation where it's not as a hot button issue, which I don't see as a possibility right now, or you could get somebody that doesn't care about that. Or you could just, again, you could just make it some sort of not police, that's what we're trying to avoid, but make it some sort of like galactic enforcement organization. The plumbers, whatever. I think it's totally workable. Even though the imagery is there, I think you could basically make it like something like SPD Time Force, where it's like, Time Force was much more police, but you know what I mean? Where it's like some sort of organization, but they don't just try to distance themselves from the cop thing, you know, in a way. I think it's doable, mainly because I really think there's something there with the two teams in terms of the marketing for the show and the merchandise of the whole choose your side aspect. I think that could be really cool. I could argue that maybe this should be lower down because of the controversy and the comments made, but I think it's more workable than they were making it out. Honestly, a lot of the comments they make about things that are an obstacle feels like something that if you just spend 5 minutes on it could be problem solved. Next up is Joer. I think Joer is kind of the most middle of the road of this list in terms of it has some aspects where you could sort of see it being like a knock against it of like, oh, the suits do look a little basic, maybe the Zords are a little silly and kiddie, but also it's in a lot of ways just a very basic Sentai in terms of like there's not a lot of weirdness like weird robot rangers or CGI rangers or controversial political stuff. It's just a bunch of like animal-based suits with some video gamey looking robots. So I don't think it would be that problematic to adapt or difficult to adapt at all. In fact, people frequently don't like the Zords because they look like Minecraft, and I don't think Minecraft is as popular as it once was. I don't follow it, but I know that it's still a known thing. Regardless of whether you would lean into the popularity of Minecraft, you could definitely also lean into a video gamey vibe. I think the suits are fine, but I think that the mecha could be quite appealing to like the toy market. Now in this list, I should have stated this at the beginning as part of my disclaimers, I am including Kyuranger, which is right here. I know we have used elements for the Zords and Cosmic Fury, and I didn't want to incur the comments of the people that just will not let go that we didn't use it fully, but I wanted to include it on this list because, again, would I have liked to have seen the suits? Sure, I would have liked to have seen some figures and stuff, although we didn't get figures, but I'm also glad we got something original that was unique to see, like just kind of seeing like different ideas that I wasn't expecting. That being said, I think this could have made a cool series. Their main reasoning was that there was too many characters, and Kyuranger does have an interesting history in the sense that, if I remember right, I don't know if this was confirmed or it was just a rumor, but there was information that went around that it was either Bandai or Saban or both that had some input, or at least they asked about aspects of the designs being more armored to be more appealing here because, you know, we used to have that synergy with Bandai of America, and that they profited from that over there too. And they also had that image of like they had Chameleon Green in that one comic imagery, which made it seem like there was a timeline gearing up to start where Kyuranger was going to be one of the things we got next before we changed to the Hasbro timeline. But one of the reasons that Hasbro and Simon gave or whatever was like, oh, it's too many characters, and people like, oh, but there's so many characters in Cosmic Fury. But the thing is, like, I understand that, and like, you know, when you get to a many character series, even in the best hands, you could find the most pitch perfect team. You're always gonna have characters fall by the wayside. But with this, I think it still could have been fine if it was a 30-episode series, even a 20-episode series. Kind of similar to Dawn Brothers, you can take a couple of the characters and make them like I said, with Dawn Brothers' idea was make Pink and Black like video game characters. You could do that here, not video game characters. Not all, my ideas aren't all video games. You could make like the Black Ranger and the Pink Ranger and stuff like that where they look a little bit more anthropomorphic and make them like kind of mascot-y characters. Like, you know, you maybe even use Champ's suit. And he's just kind of a fun character that you like to see. He's got a fun personality, but you don't got to spend a lot of time on his character. You could even do that for Orange. It would be a disappointment because he got the coolest suit. But you know what I mean. Take a couple of the Rangers and make them characters like that, where you just have to accept that there's going to be like maybe 6 characters that get the more full treatment, and then the others are kind of more just fun to be around. And I think the suits and the large number of Rangers in particular, maybe it's because of that old rumor about them having input, but I feel like this just screams a toy line that would have done so well during the Bandai era, where like, you know, with Dino Charge, they just went wild with all the different variants of suits and mecha. And the mecha maybe not so much, you know, I know people aren't as hot on them, but I just feel like I could see so many cool original Bandai of America toys being made out of this. I feel like it could have possibly been one of their better performing lines. Coming in as the runner-up is Kara Major. I just think Kara Major, I mean, I personally really like the Kara Major suits and designs. I don't think they're ones that like are a gangbuster idea. Like objectively, it's not like a slam dunk like Dinos. Like I said, I really like them, but I just think that they're, you know, the runner-up because they feel like one of the least problematic. Like, again, I talked about kind of with Joer, is you don't have these weird situations where it's like, oh, they have this weird thing and that weird thing. Like, no, it's just a straightforward Sentai you'd get any other year and adapt. The suits look fine, the Zords are appealing enough, there's very little, like, knocks against it unless they were worried about having a gimmick, where even though we've delved into the gimmick a couple times, it definitely doesn't feel like it's as big a deal to us as it is to them. So it just feels like the least problematic. I hate that word, too, problematic. Anyway, number 1. King Oger. I think King Oger could work really well. You know, you have that little bit more of an armored look. It can look goofy sometimes, but as we see in the show, it can be shot quite cinematically. So in a combination of maybe using their footage and our footage, using that same cinematic flair, it gives it a little bit of a cooler feel that kind of steps you out of that like spandex suit vibe that a lot of the general public will make fun of. I think the general theme of knights and the insect designs has a really cool appeal that I think would connect with the younger audiences of like, you know, knights are cool. I don't know about insects, like if that's a popular thing for kids or not, but I don't think it's in the category of like trains where they're like, kids don't even know what insects are. But I think like the knight theme in general is a slam dunk. The suits look a little bit cooler than average, in my opinion. I think they look more mass appealing. Not mass appealing, but a little more appealing than your average Ranger suit. And I think the Zords all look pretty appealing. You know, I just think there's a lot about this series that feels like it would be one that could do well. Yet another season where I could totally see Bandai America doing a bunch of different cool, like, variants of, like, the suits for figures and, like, weird battleizer figures and figures where they transform into a spider and maybe some repaints like they did in Dino Charge, but yeah. But that is just my list. Like I said, just kind of my opinion, weighing my personal opinion on what I think is workable and some of the stuff that's been said over the years. But what is your opinion? What are the ones you think are the most or least adaptable of the ones we skipped over in Power Rangers history? Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb steps and ring that bell to get notifications for all my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.